All right, everybody, welcome back. It is part 3 of our preparation for Ironsworn Starforge's solo campaign that I will be running. And next section of the document talks about where you will be at, your sector, your sandbox, if you will, of where things will be happening, your starting sector in this case. And that's on, if you've got the PDF single sheet, it is 114, page 114. We don't have to skip this exercise. As a caveat, I would say that there are a number of sites out there that will generate star systems for you. One of the ones, Stars Without Numbers, or Sectors Without Numbers, is another good one. If you go to their site, they have a generator page for that. You can go and generate a star field on, with all kinds of information. Sometimes it's a bit more in depth than what we will get with Ironforge, the Starforged folks. And it gives you, things like planet tags for things in that sector, in that vicinity. This one here is home to some anarchists. They have various enemies and friends and complications and things. So just keep an open mind. Not every sector that you're going to build in Ironforge will work, or you may find yourself lacking story ideas. So it's always good to have other places with which to pull that information from. This sectorswithoutnumber.com is a pretty good site to go to for those kinds of things. Also will give you additional landmarks, which is, some of those we'll find in Ironforge as well, but you'll have things like black holes. Like this is a black hole right here for this system. And you can, they'll give you other things like an occupation, half-crazed hermit caretaker. So there's a refueling station around this black hole, for instance. And one of the themes, or one of the hooks for this sector, is that pirates have taken over the refueling station, and because it appears to be the only one within a several sectors of other places, your character or your ship or your group of party might, be asked to go and retake the refueling station. There's a lot of great things there that can be taken from different systems, just in terms of plot lines or ephemera that you can use to make your games better. So I don't limit myself to one system at all. So going back to our sector here. So it says this sector uses the sector worksheet and the connections worksheet, which I both have. They're both free. You can both grab those on Ironforge's website. You can get those in the download folder. You can grab all, like I said, we've talked about a number of things here. The play kit, I believe, has everything that you need in here, the sector map, other worksheets, which include the connections worksheet. What I did was I just took the PDF, downloaded it, and then I use any kind of PDF software to either yank out the necessary files and turn them into PNGs, or you can draw a board on Windows. Also has the ability to just pull out pages if you'd like and export them to their own PDFs. You can also do a screenshot real quick if you wanted to do a quick and dirty, if you have another way of needing that information. So we have our sector sheet here and our locations. If you're using a digital tool or some other template, you just need space for notes and a symbol map. Again, you don't have to use the hex, but it makes more sense if you're trying to transit various parts of space. It just kind of makes sense in some cases in space. You can do whatever you like. You don't even have to have a grid on here. You could just have dots, like it says, simple piece of paper for notes. All right, so a sector, they say, is a settled or explored part of space. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe we're on the outskirts of civilization, which I have a feeling that is how we're going to have to do this campaign, because I would really like to have the ability to have on the outskirts. We're kind of in the sticks. Nobody's kind of listening to us, and we're being taken advantage of by some corporate superpower that we're going to have to create opportunities to be independent of. So we're going to walk through this. The starting sector is a guide. You can see it here. Keep things moving. Don't get hung up on details. Right. You can always create facts later. Right. So if we just have, right now, we could just have a planet, in the middle. We don't even have to have the full star system. We don't have to have neighbors necessarily. We can figure that out through questions. It's like, asking old Zeke the prospector, where do you take your ore? Oh, I go to, Ceylon 4 or whatever. And Ceylon 4, automatically is, oh yeah, that's like 3 light years away or something like that. So you've automatically created a fact. Choosing your starting region. So as I mentioned in the, about 5 minutes ago, I'm thinking about somewhere here in either the Outlands or on the Expanse, in the Expanse area. This would be, maybe a new colony on a planet in a system that has been lightly explored. Even Star Trek had sectors that were unexplored, part of the Alpha and the Beta quadrants. The Enterprise D on the Next Generation was always mapping out new, sectors or new areas of, the Alpha and the Beta quadrants, because we needed a monster every week, right? We needed to find new exciting things. And every time we go into the unknown, we're going to find those weird and exciting things. I'm thinking on the Outlands somewhere, not completely out in, no man's land, but maybe this is a new colony, 20, 30 years old. Maybe we've hit upon something that is making us more valuable. And because there's not a lot of law out there with the Covenant, it would mean, maybe there's a corporation that comes in and makes the play for our planet. That would also fit along the lines of our truths, like where things are scarce. So, we're not going to have the best of everything. We're not going to have, access to every technology out here. Some resources may be scarce, versus where if we were in Terminus, we'd have the best of everything. I'm imagining kind of like Hunger Games, where you've got the capital, which has the best of everything, all the way out to District 12, where it's like, they live in almost poverty in many cases. So I'm thinking the Outlands, or, if we're on the out of the Outlands, if we're like on the edge of the Outlands, the fringe, if you will, of the Expanse. When you select your campaign truths, will influence how you envision the regions and the people who live there. See, there you go. But the relative differences between the regions will remain the same. Terminus is where bulk of your people live. The Outlands is an expanding frontier, and the Expanse is what lies beyond. 100%, right? So the Outlands maybe doesn't have everything that Terminus does, and Terminus is super far away. Settlements, determine the number of settlements. So if we're in the Outlands, I'm gonna say we have 3 settlements in the area. Note that this doesn't represent a standard for how you'll populate other sectors as you explore the forge. It just gives us something manageable for this exercise. Okay, so we have 3 settlements. Generate settlement details. All right, put a marker in this page so you can come back to it. Jump to the settlement oracle starting on page 322. All right, so we're on page 117 right now. For each of the settlements in your starting sector, roll on the following tables: settlement name, population, location, authority, and settlement projects. All right, so we're gonna roll. We use our dice down here, and we're gonna go to 322. All right, so here's the settlements. First roll is 64. So this is an orbital place. All right, so locations, and we're going to go down here. First look. All right, so going back up to 117. Okay, we got locations, so we know it's orbital. Settlement name, 325. Okay, so settlement name. Okay, so they give us a bunch of new, names and things that we could use. I see a lot of different names that are still of Earth origin: Kepler, Lagrange, Luminous, and this is supposed to be a couple of hundred years after. So we've definitely kept the ideas. We've definitely kept up with our Earth roots in terms of mythology and those things, Sisyphus, that kind of thing. So we will roll this one. And of course, this is, you can make whatever you want. You could call it, Dusty or Flower Mound, or, name it after a city in the US or the EU or your Asia Pacific region. You could call it, New Madrid or something like that. So you don't just have to call it one name. You can get, as technical or non-technical as you want. So 34. 34 means this is called Helia. Oh, very nice. For an orbital platform called Helia. Very nice. The Helios, or the sun, or, the heavens, if you will. All right, so population. We are going to, okay, so we're in the outlands. So we need to roll again. And so let's see. 61. So we have in the hundreds. Okay, so this is, okay, so it's very, very similar to kind of what we're looking at right here. We have Helios Station. A couple of hundred folks live here. No telling what it could be. Maybe this is the first post that was created around our planet, that kind of thing. And so, had to, this was the jumping off point to begin colonization of the planet. Of course, we won't know until we get the other two. It could be all orbital platforms, which would make you wonder why nobody's on the planet. We'll figure that out. And because this was a 61, which is fairly high on the outlands, I'm going to say it's probably in the high hundreds, right? So I'm going to say it's probably got about 800 people. 800 people, give or take, depending on, what's going on there. If it had been closer to, 36, then I could have said it was just a few hundred folks. So maybe it fluctuates because it's a trading post or maybe something like that. So we can always work through that issue. All right, so we have authority. Okay, so we have 1 to 15 through 86 through 100 oppressive. All right. Ugh. Interesting. So depending on how I roll, I can't imagine you're going to have a lawless orbital platform. Some things have to happen for things to occur. So I'm going to have to say some of these, if it rolls extremely low, we'll have to figure out what that looks like. 87. Okay, so oppressive. Oh. Oppressive to who, though? All right, I'll put oppressive, but I'll say to who, right? We'll have to figure out what that looks like to people. So maybe we talked about the corporation that, maybe the corporation, maybe that's the problem. The corporation that's trying to take over and mine the planet has exerted control over the station that it got built. So that's what we're having to deal with right now. Roll 1 to 2 times. All right, so we're going to see what we have. 27, entertainment. Interesting. Okay, entertainment. And 02, agriculture. See, those work great, right? Those are two things that would make sense on an orbital platform of a brand new place. Maybe this is also where people who work either on the planet or in the whatever it is that happens on the planet, maybe that's what they come up for. It's a gets people away from the planet. It's maybe there's some a nice Zocalo or marketplace or arcades, or maybe you can bring the kids for a water slide or something. So that's great. Those will work perfect. I was wondering if we were going to end up something like warfare or something that wouldn't make any sense, or something like secrecy, where it might pop up that there's some nefarious things going on. So like if we'd have picked a secrecy or something like that, that would have been we'd had to have figured that out, and that would have made for additional plot points, obviously. So we've done that, and then we've got to go back and do all the other ones. So I'm gonna do that real quick here. So settlement name. 53 Neoma. So I want to mix it up a little bit. I want to mix it up this time. I don't necessarily want another orbital one, so if it pops up, I may end up trying to make it planet side or deep space. 81. Okay, that's perfect. It's in deep space. And then population. All right, population 38. All right, so we're in the hundreds. Okay, so maybe it's a smaller station of some kind. Maybe it's a listening post or something like that. So because this one was so close to the lower end of the spectrum instead of the higher end, I'm going to say this one only has about maybe 250 people. All right, authority. Okay. And so we need to roll for authority. 23. Okay, so 23 puts us at ineffectual. I wonder why that is. We'll have to figure that one out, right? Ineffectual. And then projects. So some of these won't make sense, like agriculture. I'm not exactly sure why Deep Space Project would have agricultural issues. So we'll need to, roll accordingly. Settlement projects. Here we go. So roll 1 to 2. All right. Some of them will make sense. Also mining, like, 47. Manufacturing. Interesting. I don't hate that one. All right, manufacturing and 87. Terraforming. GM Fiat. 43. Hunting. Hunting is interesting. So hunting and manufacturing. What are we hunting and manufacturing? Is it, it's not obviously hunting in the legitimate sense of like, bow and arrow and deer and everything, because it's a deep space operation. So hunting what? See, this creates interesting things. Like maybe there was reports of some weird stuff going on in the area, so this was put out there to like a listening post or something like that. Hunting. I'm gonna put a little 3 questioning marks by that because maybe there's some other shit going on there. So right, and then. And what are we manufacturing in that area? What are we taking the raw goods and services from the planet and taking it to that deep space place, or are we, what are we manufacturing from that area? Maybe this is in deep space near an asteroid belt. So it could be mining. It could be taking raw materials and just turning it into something. So we'll have to figure out what that looks like. So. All right, and for the third one, let's go ahead and figure out the names and everything. Obviously, we've got plot hooks down here that can come up as well. Settlement troubles, right? So, okay, so location. Oh, we got a 100. We have another deep space one. Okay, so that kind of colors makes things interesting, right? We have an orbital station. We have 2 deep space stations. Okay, so, all right, so we have another orbital station, and we have a name, settlement names, 56. It's called Nix. Interesting. Deep space called Nix. Okay, I don't hate that. All right, let's see. Population. Scroll back up here. 39. All right, so that makes it in the hundreds, but it's in the low hundreds. Okay. It's interesting how I'm rolling in the medium area the whole time. So, but I mean that would make sense for the Outlands, right? There shouldn't be a lot of people in here. So I'm going to say this one also has very, very few number of people. Maybe around the same amount as Neoma does, which is deep space. I think we had about the same amount there for that. So. Population, we'll say 300. And then this brings up the question of who are they are they members of specific companies, or are they free peoples? Are they just settlers? I mean, they have to have a job, right? So obviously trade, entertainment, agriculture. Maybe they're terraforming the planet. Maybe they found something when they were terraforming the planet. So yeah, we'll see. This is all part of the fun. So let me see. What did I put down for that? So we got population. Now we need authority, right? We need the authority. I need one of these to be somewhat fair. I can't keep rolling high on the authority or the low. So how would a space station function with no authority? Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand how that one would work without an. I don't understand how authority or no laws or no authority would work here. I'm gonna put it, but I'm gonna have to figure that out, right? It's either there has to be some sort of order and control. Otherwise, who does the day-to-day operations? Who keeps the lights on? Who keeps this thing from floating around in the the rest of the universe? That kind of thing. So this is sometimes why I have issues with dice, because it's like the dice got their own minds, right? So I'm gonna say either none or lawless or very little. I'm not going to say it's completely lawless. I'd have to say there has to be something. It's not like everybody's Mad Max warlord kind of shit. I guess it would depend on what they do there. So we'll get to see what those are. The projects. All right. So the projects that this thing does is, all right. So we're going to roll 2. Okay, I'm not going to do agriculture again. Jesus Christ, I got 2 0-1s in a row. All right, something else. 33. Expansion. Interesting. Okay, expansion of what? That's a question. All right, so projects, settlement projects, expansion. And that's going to take some thought, right? What kind of expansion? Is it, if it's a terraforming thing, I guess expansion would be that, maybe what are they expanding? Are they expanding boundaries? Are they exploring? Is it an exploration kind of expansion? Just interesting, because exploration is like right next to it on the list. So they're in alphabetical order, so that's also the reason why it's next to it. But makes you wonder what kind of expansion we're talking about here. So that's an interesting thought. And thinking about those themes: expansion, building, taking what was small and building out. Maybe it's a franchise for a burger joint, a galactic burger joint. I don't know. Maybe it's a franchise. Maybe it's a franchise. I got to do it again. I can't. 80. Okay, so that's better, right? Subsistence. Expansion and subsistence. Well, the burger franchise would fit here. Subsistence, trying to. Thankfully, spirituality didn't come out to it, so that's cool. Interesting. Expansion and subsistence. One of the things that I'll probably do is look up on the internet, like, examples of expansion or subsistence, or, what does that mean? If there's synonyms similar to that, just to give me some ideas on, other things that it could be, synonyms for subsistence or expansion, because we already have agriculture. We already have some manufacturing. We've got something hunting something. What kind of manufacturing, right? Are they manufacturing weapons? Are they manufacturing, terraforming gear? It's a ton of things here. And it doesn't have to be terraforming. It could be mining. It could be farming gear, because we have an agricultural system here. So, all right, so those are the 3 that we have. I'm going to go back to page 117 now. All right, we're going to generate the planets. Now, again, this is one of those things where I said we can either make them ourselves, or we can build, there's many different systems out there for planet generation. So like Donjon World, donjon.bin.sh, you can create a sci-fi world here. You can create a star system generator here, so you can also force it to have a terrestrial world. So that would be great in our case. So you've got one, here's a terrestrial world around a red dwarf, for instance. And you can, and it gives you all kinds of cool information about, what type of world, the orbital radius. I mean, it gets fairly specific in here, including, hydrosphere. So there's ice, there's the atmosphere is a bit corrosive, weird. And they give you a little plot hook, an alien artifact. So if you're looking for, that kind of thing, that makes sense. See, so there you go. Now you got rock planets, you got an ice planet. We have a terrestrial world inside the Goldilocks zone, and you have to continually randomize things. So if you need There you go. So now we have a terrestrial world. We have a rock planet, an ice planet, another red dwarf, companion star, distant. So yeah, now we got a bunch of them, right? We have a blue giant, a Chthonian planets. We have rock planets. If you wanted to make things interesting, plus it has a distant star, right? So you could, it's a binary system. But yeah, you get all kinds of cool stuff from there. Anyway, donjon.bin.sh, donjon.bin.sh. Really great site for a lot of things, not just sci-fi, but RPG and related. Please like and subscribe and click that little button there at the bottom on the YouTube channel so that way you can be notified of new content. Hope everyone had a great time, and I'll see you again real soon on another episode of Peerless Gamer. Take care now.